From Washington Cathedral in the
Miami's offense, the Oilers sack the Dolphins 17-9. And now let's go to Sperry NFL Report in New York.
This morning, Elma Harris, a power company vice president, said that as of today, no Alabama Power Company employees have been laid off. Harris told the court that so far, only Kraft employees under contract to the company have been given notice. He said the second phase of the layoffs will also include Kraft employees and possibly some employees of the company. During the proceeding, Maurice Bishop, Governor George Wallace's attorney, read from a Southern Company stockholders' newsletter, which stated that 1978 marks the 24th consecutive year which the Southern Company has paid higher dividends per share to its common stockholders. Meanwhile, Harris contended that the need for a rate increase was demonstrated in the complaint case brought against the company by the governor. He said the need for an increase was so great that the company decided to seek a rate increase through those proceedings rather than halt them and risk a 6-month waiting period. Judge Joseph Phelps gave attorneys for both the state and the power company until tomorrow to finish filing summaries in the case. He told power company attorneys that he understood the urgency in the case and promised to make a prompt decision. From Montgomery County Circuit Court, Janet May, WSFA TV News.
What started out as a Public Service Commission investigation into rate mileage charges by telephone companies has now blossomed into a complex system of give and take proposals. South Central Bell, the utility in question, contends that if it does provide the reduction to consumers in mileage charges, it would mean nearly $1 million in revenue loss to the utility. Therefore, at the request of the Public Service Commission, they have provided data that would add higher charges to other services, ultimately ending up with a zero revenue impact to the utility. In the data, there is information dealing with lowered intrastate toll charges and a new directory assistance charge and 6 other issues, some to the consumer's benefit, others to the utility's benefit. The Office of Consumer Protection, however, is holding to the view that the mileage charges should never have been levied originally. Determining that question is the meat of the beef. Should they be compensated for the near $1 million reduction in rates? That question was not answered at today's meeting. It'll be continued tomorrow morning. The overall air at the meetings is of slight confusion, with many interested parties not wanting to drop the discussion on their areas of interest. There are sources, however, that indicate that the meetings and the question will end within the next 30 days before Commissioners Jim Ziegler and Chris Watley leave office. At the Public Service Commission hearing rooms, Chris Grimshaw, WSFA TV News.
The major gains in the 6th Federal Reserve District were in non-farm employment, residential construction, consumer spending, and bank lending. An increase in construction and trade employment in October contributed to substantial job gains in manufacturing and service areas. The report shows employment up in durable goods industries, mainly lumber, stone, glass, and fabricated metal products. Employment was down in the textile, apparel, and chemical industries. Residential construction contracts were higher in October, so was the number of units contracted for. But mortgage rates continued to climb, and the Federal Reserve has evidence that borrowers are switching from conventional to government-insured loans. Bank lending increased during early November, and there were strong increases at large banks posting an 11.5% prime lending rate. With the approach of the holiday season, passbook savings deposits dropped for the second month in a row. New car loans were down due to slow deliveries of some popular 1979 models. Prices received by farmers were varied in November. Corn, wheat, eggs, and calf prices increased, but prices of broilers, hogs, grapefruit, and soybeans declined. Livestock slaughter rose sharply in October. Broiler production continued to expand from earlier levels, while broiler prices edged downward. Bank loans in agricultural areas declined slightly in mid-November. Deposits rose, the federal government says, reflecting the increased pace of loan repayments at the end of harvest season. Glenda Webb, WSFA TV News.
The board voted on a motion by member Dr. Thomas Staten to discharge Deputy Commissioner Wheeler Foshee. Recently, Foshee and his brother, former State Senator E.C. Crum Foshee, were convicted of mail fraud. In his motion, Staten said that it is the apparent intent of the law to remove from office officials of the state government convicted of a crime. When the vote came, it was 2 in favor of the motion, 1 abstention, and 1 recusal. Staten and board member the Reverend John Vickers voted for the motion. Board Chairman Lewis Wilkerson recused himself because he serves as Wheeler Foshee's attorney, and Buddy Hamner abstained, waiting on an Attorney General's opinion. So what is the status of Commissioner Foshee? Board Chairman Wilkerson said he did not know, as did member Buddy Hamner. Even the principal involved, Wheeler Foshee, did not know how to interpret the vote.
I don't know. I really don't know. I assume it's a legal matter. It'll have to be finally determined at some point.
You plan to talk to anybody about this, your attorney, for example?
Well, my attorney is Mr. Wilkerson. As you know, I sure do plan to talk to him, yes.
Only one person at the meeting expressed an opinion one way or the other, and that was Dr. Staten, who made the motion to fire Foshee.
When the vote was completed, I said to the commissioner, 2 votes for and none against carries, does it not? And it was my impression that he said yes. That is my personal impression.
You said that you felt as if this was something that needed to be done. Why?
Because we have discharged low-ranking employees upon their conviction in court of a crime. I see no justification for discharging a poor $10,000 a year guard upon his conviction and not discharging a top executive for his conviction.
One board member, Marion Carroll of Mobile, was not at the meeting. When Foshee was questioned about his status and asked if he would show up for work tomorrow, he said he didn't know. Dennis Latham, WSFA TV News. You plan to talk to anybody about this, your attorney?
Governor Wallace's position is as it has been from the start. He has respectfully declined Mr. Farley's invitation. The governor's position is to represent the people of Alabama in the Public Service Commission and in the courts. He feels that any request for a rate increase should go through the regular, normal processes of the Public Service Commission and the courts. It is there that they will have the opportunity to prove any justification of a rate increase. And it's the governor's position to have his attorney there to see that any such proposed increase is justified before it's granted.
All right, one of the reasons that the power company was seeking this help was to expedite the litigation on it because of the large number of dollars involved in laying off construction workers and putting off construction itself. Is the governor concerned about that?
The governor is concerned that we don't do something in the name of expeditiousness that would hurt the consumers of Alabama. If the rate increase is justified, it'll stand the test of the Public Service Commission and the courts.
All right.
We're very pleased that the fuel adjustment for January will be substantially down. This month, the fuel adjustment was $2.28 per 1,000 kilowatt hours, and in January it will be 34 cents. So this is a welcome relief, especially in a month when our weather could be bad and that we could be using a great deal more electric heat.
What was the main reason for the $1.94 per 1,000 watt drop?
Well, the main reason was that the cost of purchase power was down a little bit less than what was estimated, plus the fact that the Farley nuclear plant has been running pretty well at the highest level that it can. So all these combinations helped to drop the fuel clause. We had a little more hydro generation this month also.
Mental Health Department Commissioner Taylor Hardin says 1978 is a year which has seen some great advances for the Mental Health Department. Hardin said it pleased him to say that his department made it through the year without receiving any form of criticism or unfavorable comment from anyone. Perhaps the largest item of business before the board was a letter from local community health board presidents requesting larger allocations for the upcoming year. The group cited increased costs due to inflation as the main reason. Hardin, however, pointed out that federal funding for the upcoming year won't be any larger than this year's, and if anything, it might be less. That note of bad news could only lead to the fact that state allocations won't be any larger either. As the year winds down, there will be 2 board member seats expiring. Nominations for Dr. C.A. Lightcap will be sent to Governor Wallace, and 2 others will also be nominated for that same seat. They are Dr. Charles Rutherford and Dr. Aubrey Terry. The position held by Dr. Winston A. Edwards will be filled by one of 3 nominees chosen. They are Drs. Hillary Henderson, Leon Hamrick, and Ronald Henderson. The light spot of the meeting was the unveiling of portraits depicting the present and past chairman of the state board, portraits of Frank Moody, Dr. Robert Parker, Sim Thomas, Dr. Claude Brown, Dr. Paul Burleson, Jack Nolan, Carl Boley, Dr. Everett Strandell, and present board chairman Dr. Willard Smith. At the Mental Health Board, Chris Grimshaw, WSFA TV News.
Officials of the State Department of Health, as well as the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency located near Gunner Air Force Station, have begun testing the air for radioactive fallout. The air is being sampled by devices such as this one, which pump a known amount of air through a special filter over a certain amount of time. Joe Marsh, the Deputy Director of the Alabama Environmental Lab for the State Department of Health, says they have begun sampling air in about 15 locations throughout the state.
We have activated all the air sampling network that's operated by the state, and it's located throughout. We're planning on analyzing all the samples as we receive them.
And when will they start coming in, and how will you analyze them?
We have already started receiving samples, and we are planning to start analyzing next Wednesday, since there is a delay in the time that we have to count the samples.
What sort of process will you go through to analyze these?
Most of the samples we will receive will be on a small air filter, low volume air sampling filter, and we will place these in a low background beta counter and count them for a period of 50 minutes, after which we will calculate the picocures per cubic meter of beta activity on the samples.
What does this translate into as far as how do you correlate all these samplings together to come up with some sort of hard data as to how much is in Alabama?
Usually we have had over the past data to tell us what backgrounds are in the state, and usually with these samples from the Chinese fallout, they will be much higher than these samples we've analyzed before.
So it'll be the difference between the background radiation and what you're receiving now, and that will give you what is coming into the state?
That is correct.
At the same time, federal officials are working on a much larger scale in the monitoring process. The director of the Eastern Environmental Radiation Facility of the EPA, Charles Porter, says they are working with other federal agencies in keeping a watch on the fallout as it moves across the United States.
The NOAA people had indicated that the debris would traverse the United States and probably enter the Pacific Northwest probably on Thursday the 21st. And I think their previous indications was that the debris was traveling above 10,000 feet. Now this is because of the slow traverse across the Pacific Ocean. Most of the debris has become quite scattered and quite patchy. It got into a couple of wind shears that has spread it virtually all over the country. It should traverse the United States from Thursday and probably reach the East Coast by Saturday night or early Sunday morning.
Samples from the EPA monitors across the nation are being sent to the Montgomery lab for analysis. Still, state and federal officials say they do not expect any unusually large amounts of fallout, but they will not actually know until about the day after Christmas. Dennis Latham, WSFA TV News.
Joseph Vork has spent the past 2 years in Iran. working for Grumman Aerospace Corporation, teaching Iranians how to fly Navy F-14s. He lives in the town Isfahan. Though demonstrations in Iran have made headlines, Warwick says he's seen very little anti-Shia activity, but he says while most of the demonstrations have been in the capital of Tehran, anti-Shia activity has been spreading during this Muslim holy month.
The students in the other parts of the country, they had a few small sympathetic strikes, but nothing really much. And during August, September, and the first part of October, we'd read in the newspaper that they had so many demonstrators in Tehran in the streets, tanks running through the streets, burning the banks. Once in a while, a couple of the very religious cities like Qom and Mashhad would have another demonstration, but nothing very much. And then when the religious month of Muharram started, and just a couple of weeks prior to that, a lot of other cities had started, the students in the universities had started demonstrating. Shiraz, Isfahan, little cities that, very small population, had counter demonstrations, pro-Shah demonstrations, and it just started spreading a lot more. And that made people a lot more nervous. I think that's why a lot of people wanted to leave in December, because it had spread so much more.
As an American working in Iran, do you feel threatened, scared ever?
No, oddly enough, I didn't, except one night. It's kind of an odd story. We really don't know what happened, but we were sitting at some friend's house in our housing area, and a neighbor came over and knocked on the door and said, "Did you hear the gunfire?" And we said, "No." We went outside, and it sounded like a Vietnam going on over in the distance. Automatic weapons fire, heavy weapons, rifles, and it went on for about 3 or 4 hours. It sounded like the whole city was being right in the middle of a firefight. The next day, there were indications that it might have been psychological warfare on the part of the demonstrators, and that it might have been cassette tapes. Most of the mosques now have loudspeakers on them when they call the faithful to prayer. And what they had been doing evidently was to hook tape recorders up to these loudspeakers and then play tapes with gunfire on it to make it sound like there was some kind of huge battle going on when in fact nothing had happened.
Warwick says that while the American government and private businesses have recently begun evacuating dependents, many refuse to leave. He says he's looking forward to returning to Iran next week and thinks that in the new year the hostilities will diminish. Glenda Webb, WSFA TV News.
It's been a busy Friday and Saturday for the Montgomery Police Department. Immediately after having made an arrest in a rape robbery case, detectives were called out on a homicide in the city's west side. A 30-year-old Montgomery man was arrested yesterday by police on charges relating to a rape and robbery at the discount furniture store here in the capital city.
Charles Lee Martin, a black male who lived at 426 South Hope Street, Montgomery, Alabama, was arrested for the December 13th robbery, rape, which occurred at Discount Clothes at 601 Mildred Street.
By the time officials had put their paperwork down from that arrest, there came a call that a man had been shot in the city's west side. Paramedics and police responded and found a man in his late 30s bleeding from a gunshot wound. Police say there were several witnesses who could narrow down the suspect, and they are now looking for him.
Edward Anderson, a black male, 39 years old, was shot in the back with a .22 caliber, which resulted in his death. This time we're looking for a black male, John Love, who, according to witnesses' statements, stated that he shot Anderson.
What were the apparent circumstances around that shooting?
It was an argument over some money. That's what our investigation shows at this time.
Rescue personnel worked feverishly on the wounded man, then finally transported him to Jackson Hospital, where there the last breath of life left Edward Anderson. As of airtime, police had not placed John Love under arrest, but an all-points bulletin is out for him. At the Montgomery Police Department, Chris Grimshaw, WSFA TV News. Former Attorney General John Mitchell this morning departed the federal prison camp at Maxwell Air Force Base for a 5-day Christmas furlough. The 63-year-old Mitchell walked with a quick pace despite hip surgery that kept him out of the prison for 6 months last summer. Mitchell didn't stop to talk to reporters, but briskly moved on to an awaiting taxi cab which drove him to the Montgomery-Danley field. Prison officials wouldn't say where Mitchell planned to spend his short Christmas holiday. Mitchell is the last of the major convicted conspirators from the Watergate scandal still in prison. Both H.R. Haldeman and John Ehrlichman have been released from prison, both serving a total of 18 months. Mitchell will have served a total of 19 months when he is released from the camp on January 19th. Mitchell will return to this facility in 5 days to finish serving as part of a 1 to 4 year term on charges of obstruction of justice, conspiring to obstruct justice, and multiple counts of lying under oath. At Maxwell Air Force Base Prison Camp, Chris Grimshaw, WSFA TV News.
Well, they don't get an increase, it'll be poor if they lay the workers off.
Do you think that they really are that short of money?
Yes.
Do you think that the Supreme Court should let them have the rate increase?
I think so.
No, I think they make enough. Just like any other company, I think they have a monopoly, and I don't believe they should do that. It seems to me that they could do away with some of the vice presidents they have, or some of the high executives they have, instead of the lower-paid workers, just as well.
I don't think much of it.
You think they really needed to?
No.
Why do you think they're doing that?
I don't know.
You think?
But it's funny that Alabama has more water than most anybody in the country, except maybe Michigan, and yet we have to go elsewhere to buy power.
So you think the hydroelectric power is good enough?
No, I think we need, we have atomic, don't we?
Nuclear power.
Nuclear, yeah.
Okay. What do you think about the power company laying off its workers?
I think they could cut down somewhere else, probably.
Why do you think they would do something like that?
Like what?
Lay off the workers.
Perhaps to get more attention quicker.
What do you think the Supreme Court should do?
I'm not sure. What can they do? You know, everywhere we turn, the doors are closed on us, so I don't know.
I don't know. I think it's kind of in a difficult situation in that it's hard to force them to be more efficient. You say, well, we won't give it to you, and they say, well, we got to lay people off. I'm sure in that management system somewhere there's some room for improved efficiency. And like anything, it's, you know, you got your organization, they cut. It's interesting to find out what percentage of the people laid off were upper management versus the average hourly worker. That would be interesting to find out.
Do you think that the layoff proposition is necessary?
I don't know. I think it's kind of playing games with, you know, sort of like they say, well, we won't give you a rate increase, and they say, well, I'm going to lay somebody off. I think they could have laid off maybe a third of the people that were laid off.
Point, and that's final.
You're overreacting, Phil. What's the matter?
Well, his doctor told him caffeine bothers him.
You should drink Sanka brand decaffeinated coffee.
But I only like real coffee.
Phil, Sanka brand is 100% real coffee. Try it.
This is real coffee.
My goodness, look at the lovebirds.
That's what happens when you fall in love with Sanka brand.
Sanka brand, the coffee that lets you be your best.
Ghastly, ghostly trip turns the stingiest man in town into the nicest man in town. Tonight at 8, 7 Central and Mountain on NBC.
Ladies and gentlemen and children of all ages.
The old-fashioned tent circus, a feature on Weekend tonight.